Good day, everybody. So I wanted to, on this video, to compare and contrast the amphibious landings and seizure of Okinawa during World War II, United States versus Japan, against the backdrop of what a amphibious landing would need to look like against Taiwan. So the first issue you can clearly see is the size differential. Okay, Taiwan is much bigger than Okinawa. The terrain is somewhat similar. It does have the lowland mountain areas that is heavily forested. Um, some of the terrain obviously looks much different now than it did in World War II. But just to give you a size comparison of Okinawa um, versus Taiwan. And at the Battle of Okinawa, the Japanese had roughly 70,000 troops garrisoned on the islands, with another possibly up to 40,000 inhabitants of Okinawa conscripted to fight against said landings. So probably just over 100,000 possible combatants on Okinawa. On Taiwan, we can expect that would be mobilized very quickly of a number in the neighborhood of at least 250,000. At least. And it would probably go much higher, much higher than that. But I'm giving bare bones estimate. Worst case scenario, Taiwan is able to marshal 250,000 men. So back to Okinawa, they had just about 100,000 men. Very few tanks, if any. Okay, the Taiwanese would have upwards to 1,000 plus various types of light to medium main battle tanks, including M60A3s with thermal imaging sights. So didn't have that with the Japanese on Okinawa. There was also the issue that the U.S. forces were not facing. Now, I understand the technology is different, and there could be different opposing views in terms of vertical envelopment that the Taiwanese would face. But at the same time, you have other weapon systems coming into play that would help negate that and would help benefit the Taiwanese, such as anti-ship missile systems that were not seen during World War II, guided anti-tank weapon systems, surface-to-air missile systems. So there's a host of weapon systems that were not seen on Okinawa during World War II, obviously. But that battle to seize this island of 100,000 defenders, the United States had to marshal about 180,000 combat troops, but by the time everything was said and done, there was almost 250,000 U.S. troops on Okinawa. So think about that for a second, and then by the end of the battle, about 12,000 U.S. troops were killed in action, and another up to 30,000 to 50,000 were wounded. So pretty significant, and the Okinawans and the Japanese took significant casualties as well. I mean, some people think that up to 70,000 people were killed and wounded on Okinawa, possibly more. And a lot of that was attributed to the fighting tenacity of the Japanese. Would we see that in Taiwan? I don't know. I don't think the Bushido code and the warrior culture is prevalent in Taiwan. Matter of fact, I know it's not. And I think most people would agree with me on that matter. I do think there are elements of warrior culture on Taiwan, and I think you would definitely see units and certain groups of people fighting just as tenacious as we saw on Okinawa, but probably not as widespread. But at the same time, we would definitely see a lot more troops being mobilized. We would see a lot more technology coming into play that would the Chinese would be facing. So again, just trying to compare and contrast how difficult Okinawa was and how we had the Solomon Island campaigns, we had the um, a host, Guadalcanal, Wake Island, a host of other experiences um, that the United States was able to draw upon when landing on Okinawa, which was the largest amphibious operation in the Pacific campaign, and that would probably take a similar force to deal with the opposing forces on Taiwan. So the whole concept, I believe, of a Chinese amphibious landing on Taiwan proper is I think it's a little silly personally. But you know, you never know what the Chinese can do or believe that they can do. But in the end, you know, based on kind of what we saw with Okinawa and the kind of casualties that occurred, the Chinese by no means could win this, and casualties would be horrendous.